Today we kick off Paul's letter to the Philippians. And in the last couple months we've been hearing from lots of different letters of St. Paul, each of which have their own flavor and emphasis. So we just finished up Ephesians, which has some real gems about vocations. You may remember he said, love your wives and live a life worthy of the call you have received. Before that, we heard from Paul's letter to the Galatians, in which he can be brutally honest with them because he has a very close relationship with them. And in that passage, in that letter, he talks about where the gospel comes from, that it's not our own invention, but it truly comes from God. And before that, we were listening for a long time to Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, which is focused on the love that a community needs to have, the love that is essential for a Christian community. So we hear things like love is patient, love is kind, come from this great letter of St. Paul. But if I'm honest, today's letter, the one we're going to hear from the Philippians, is my personal favorite. And this is sometimes called Paul's letter of joy. Now, the context to which Paul is writing this letter is to the people in Philippi. And Philippi had a large grouping of retired soldiers, people who were Roman soldiers and now were living there. And so it was really strongly nationalistic and great patriotism that was around in Philippi. Now, it's interesting that this letter to the Philippians, which is about joy, should be addressed to a community like that. But perhaps you've been around people who watch a lot of 24-hour news or political commentary 24/7. It's easy to become joyless if that's what is totally surrounding us. And so Paul says we need to be people of joy. What's ironic is that he is writing this letter about joy, likely from Ephesus, from jail, awaiting to find out if he is going to be executed or released. Interesting context for him to be talking about joy. And he says in these opening lines of this letter to the Philippians, what is the source of our joy? He says, I give thanks. Giving thanks to God for the blessings that we have received is the beginning of joy. And I remember a while ago, I was having spiritual direction and I had this whole laundry list of things I was upset about, worked up about, complained about. And at the end of it, my spiritual director said, how much is gratitude a part of your spiritual life? A great question, about this much. So it really challenged me to think about beginning with thanksgiving. And when we begin with gratitude, we acknowledge all of those ways that God blesses us, that Christ is present in our lives today. So I challenge you today, as you seek to be a people of joy, to think about 10 reasons you have for your joy. 10 ways in which Christ has blessed your life, that you might be filled with His joy and emanate that joy to others you encounter today.